Hi everyone, this is a video on sexual shadow work because I really think it's important in our spiritual community to address this issue. It's very big deal right now. There's a lot of people that I know and in my own personal experience who are experiencing sexual abuse in the spiritual community under the guise of spiritual awakening or spiritual opening. And it's really deeply important that we get back to our centres, particularly around this issue. Now, there's a lot of different ways that we use sexuality, and in our culture, in our media, it's still a very big deal. It's in almost every book and every movie that you're going to watch, and it's not even talking about the influence of, pornography, sexual trafficking, and in particular a lot of this MS or violent sort of sexual action that's become very popular with the release of a few books recently. So I wanted to really say that the sexuality is very similar to relationships in the sense that it's either going to be used for the purposes of love or for the purposes of fear. And the best guidance that I can give you in this area is to follow your gut and to listen to your heart. If your intuition is saying there's something off about this encounter, or I don't feel comfortable being sexual with this person, pray, ask for that help and stay strong inside your being. Because while the Holy Spirit will use sex to bring us into deeper communion or communication with each other, the ego will use it to tear us apart. And all of us have been in both situations. All of us have been in situations where sex has brought us together. And if you think of the amount of energy and the amount of light and the amount of love that sex brings in, particularly because it's an act of union, it's reminiscent of the unity of consciousness itself. That's a huge amount of light that comes through. It's a huge amount of pleasure. It's a huge amount of surrender. It's a huge amount of joy and peace and connection. When your spirits are joined, your bodies match very easily and naturally. It's the most natural thing in the world. The problem arises when we forget that it was that spiritual union that created all that sexual chemistry, and we start trying to force people to connect with us through sex. And that's when the ego gets mad. It can come in many different guises. I talk about this in my book, Soulmate Shadow Work, which is going to be released soon. In particular with the sexual abuser archetype that comes out within us that believes that we're entitled to sex, and that if we don't get it, we have to go and get it somewhere else, and the actual act of having sex is more important than what happens during that act. I've never met a person who hasn't had the experience of being left empty or with that feeling of being used after sex when they've tried to use sex to create connection with a person that there just wasn't connection with. So it's very easy to use sex to separate people. And because it's such a taboo topic and it's still so vulnerable in spiritual circles, it's not easy to talk about it going wrong or it not being quite right without creating more of the same. It just tends to snowball. If your sexual experience has been bad, then it tends to affirm whatever fears that you have about the relationship. And what you have to understand when it comes to sexual shadow work is that whatever is happening in your bedroom is very much normally what's happening outside in every other area of the world. It's just that with sex, you're going to a very deep subconscious place. Now, if I say to you, for example, close your eyes for me and imagine that you're being held against a naked chest and that someone is stroking your body and telling you how much they love you and making noises and sounds and holding you close. Most adults will think about sex, but it's incredibly similar to most infants being held in their mother's arms. I mean, I could have gone even deeper and said, imagine that you're sucking on someone's nipples. It's a very sexual adult thing, but it's also a very innocent infant thing. And when we have sex and we regress back to this infant state, and in that state, whatever message we get from sex, so for example, let's say, you have sex with your partner and they don't meet your needs. That message that you're reinforcing through that sexual act is, my partner never meets my needs. Let's say that you're having sex with your partner and you're not really able to connect with them. You're just focused on getting your own pleasure. And they seem to be kind of, spaced out and out of it. The message that you get is that nobody understands me or takes care of me. And these messages then we carry into life. We carry into work. We carry into the rest of the relationship. We carry into other relationships after this one. And that discontent, that niggling feeling of not really being desired isn't there. So there's a lot of, because there's so much shame around sex and so much, I suppose, emotional hype around being refused around it. It's very difficult for people to be honest around it. So a lot of women will have sex when they want to have sex. A lot of men will have sex when they don't want to have sex. But energetically, there are no secrets. So for example, let's say I'm a man and I'm really feeling insecure and low and I've had a terrible day at work. And I'm thinking, I know what will cheer me up. I'm going to get home and I'm going to jump on my partner. We're going to make love. But inside, I don't really have the desire for her body. There isn't blood flowing down to my groin. There's just this feeling that I really need something to fill up this void that's been created by my insecurity. I need to feel more masculine and I want to get something from sex. And then I go home and I come on to my girlfriend or my partner and she says, no, I'm not really in the mood for sex. What the ego will do is be like, well, she doesn't want me, she doesn't desire me. It will use that conversation to make you feel even more emasculated and to go even deeper into the wound that was there in the first place, which is your insecurity that you're not wanted or that you don't belong. And it will probably project that onto her in the sense of, she doesn't want me, she's not interested in me. When, if you get radically honest with yourself, what you see is you weren't interested in her. There was no part of you that actually wanted to have sex with her. What you wanted was to have this pain inside you, this fear that you don't belong on this planet or with another person, removed. And you wanted to fill up the space inside you by using her for sex. Now, women very much enjoy sex and will respond to the desire in a man for their body and for their being. What they won't respond to is a desire in a man to use sex in order to make themselves feel better, because that's not very sexy, it's not very attractive, it's very needy, and it's very macho versus masculine. So you see how easy it is for the ego to manipulate people in ways that are very, very sordid and to pit us against our partners. It works in reverse often, and I'll, with the women example, which is a woman will, experience something that's not great, at work or with her partner. Let's say they have a fight, and in response to that, she will freeze up sexually. She won't desire the man, and instead of sitting with that feeling and doing the forgiveness works that's required to bring your sexuality back into alignment, she will just say that, they'll start making fun of a man's sexual urges or his sexual needs or his sexual desires, or literally use that sexuality to emasculate the man. And the ego will then say, will project onto the man in that scenario, being like, all he wants is sex. He doesn't really love me. He doesn't really want me. When the truth is, sex is a very big act of love. It's a huge act of love. And if you just want to know how much, think about your partner, cheating on you or misusing that. That's how much of an act of love it is. It's an act of deep physical connection. So it's that space where you have to get right in the center of yourself and realize that sex is very, very important. but it's supposed to be used for helping us become the men and the women that we're capable of being, and deepening that communion between us, even if there's no commitment involved. And if you allow the sexual shadows to come in and to start using sex in order to gain power and control over your partner, or in order to try and fill some void inside you, it really won't work long term, and it will kind of backfire. So I hope that helps you stay more sexually aligned with your true self, and to see a little bit more about how your shadow is working inside the sexual arena. If you like this video, please subscribe below, and please feel free to ask me any questions. Thanks, and bye.